Two-time unified heavyweight champion of the world, Anthony Joshua, will face what could be proved to be his toughest test in Ukraine's own cruiserweight giant, Oleksander Usyk. Like many before him, the undefeated Ukrainian will make his move into arguably boxing's most coveted division to try and snatch the WBO, WBA, IBO, and IBF belts from Britain's highly regarded 238-pound knockout artist, Anthony AJ Joshua. According to reports, the highly anticipated bout is scheduled to take place this year on the 25th of September in London, England, at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But before we dive into this one, be sure to leave a like on the video and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future content. Over the years, boxing has seen some of its most admired athletes take the jump from the cruiserweight division, which holds a current weight limit of 200 pounds, into the heavyweight division, essentially any fighter who weighs over the 200-pound mark. Fighters such as Evander Holyfield, London's David Haymaker Hay, and the sometimes overlooked cruiserweight and heavyweight champion James Lights Out Toney. That being said, you can probably count the successful endeavors from cruiserweight to heavyweight on one hand, and it's safe to say that fighters such as Evander Holyfield and James Toney only come around once in a blue moon in boxing. However, many believe that Oleksander Usyk is indeed one of these once-in-a-generation fighters, with some going as far to say that the Ukrainian may just be the best cruiserweight to have ever graced the sport. And going by Usyk's recent performances, his almost unmatched amateur background, and his seemingly unbreakable mentality, you don't have to look far to see why. Currently holding a record of 18 wins, with 13 of those coming by way of knockout, 0 draws and 0 losses, Oleksander has yet to taste defeat in the ring as a professional. In his last outing, and his first in the heavyweight division, he would face Derek Chisora, a tough, experienced, hard-hitting Brit, who had previously fought some of the most recognized names in the division, including Tyson Fury, Vitaly Klitschko, David Haye, and fellow domestic contender Dillian Whyte. Despite fears of Derek's weight advantage, durability, and punching power, Usyk made an impressive start to his heavyweight career, outboxing Chisora for most of the fight and earning himself an impressive unanimous decision in the Brit's backyard.
The new WBO Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion, Oleksander Usyk.
In spite of his few critics, Oleksander has proven time and time again that he deserves to be where he is today. So why are so few giving him a chance against AJ? AJ Anthony Joshua was once described by fellow Brit and now retired super middleweight boxer Carl Froch as an Adonis. And when you look at Joshua, it isn't hard to see why. If you could build the perfect heavyweight boxer, it surely wouldn't be far off of AJ. He stands at an impressive 6 foot 4 inches, hits like a mule, and has a sculpted body seemingly sent from the gods. But not only does he have brawn, Joshua has had to display his boxing brain and technique in the ring throughout several of his high-profile victories. Against Klitschko, he dragged himself from the brink of a knockout defeat to come back, regain his composure, pick Klitschko off with beautiful combinations, and then eventually finish him with a quick-handed flurry in the 11th round.
Joshua's trying to finish him right down. Down goes Klitschko.
Furthermore, in his rematch with Andy Ruiz Jr., Joshua avoided most of Ruiz's fast overhands and sharp combinations through his use of slick footwork and ring generalship, peppering Ruiz Jr. with his much improved left jab for most of the night, and earning himself a wide unanimous decision in the process.
Champion of the world, the man known as AJ.
You could go as far to say that there isn't many things Joshua hasn't seen nor experienced within boxing's square circle, despite only 25 professional appearances. The knockout defeat to Ruiz Jr. in the early summer of 2019 shocked the world, with many drawing comparisons to arguably boxing's biggest upset when James Buster Douglas defeated Mike Tyson in similar fashion early in 1990. And some say that Joshua hasn't really looked like his former undefeated, formidable self since. However, there is no doubt that he would have learned some important lessons in the ring that night, and going by his calculated performance in the rematch with Ruiz and then his subsequent KO over Bulgarian contender Kubrat Pulev last year, he seems a much improved and therefore a much more dangerous opponent for the former unified cruiserweight world champion Oleksander Usyk. Although Joshua may have the edge in professional experience, Usyk provides an almost completely different test for AJ. with some saying Usyk is just one of those fighters you can't train for. Nicknamed the Cat, he possesses a very clinical, calculated style of boxing. But, as shown in the past, the Ukrainian definitely isn't afraid to take the initiative and let his power punches go if he sees a potential opening. Having come up the ranks in the Ukrainian boxing system, and like many other Ukrainian fighters, such as Lomachenko and now retired heavyweight Vladimir Klitschko, Usyk has a solid, cat-like jab, held behind a high defensive guard. Not to mention his clever, slick footwork and quick counters, there's no doubt that Oleksandr will be a tricky customer for Joshua on the night. Since his rise to heavyweight royalty, Joshua has become known for his speed and power, with many of his fights ending in spectacular highlight reel knockouts. And now every time AJ fights, you almost expect this to be the outcome. Even though Joshua may have weight advantage and more experience boxing at heavyweight in comparison to Usyk, few are under the illusion that this will be a quick night's work for the Brit. In boxing, they say, styles make fights. So could Usyk's tricky, dangerous style be all wrong for AJ on the 25th of September?
As long as he don't get hit across the chin, he actually does have a chance, I would think. Because he throw a lot of punches, he's southpaw, he busy, he's slick. So
I think Usyk's fundamentally a lot better than Anthony Joshua. I'm a big fan of what Joshua is doing for the sport, but I think Usyk wins that fight.
If you believe in fate or destiny, and you're a fan of Oleksander Usyk, you may just think that things have fallen into place at the right time for the Ukrainian. After Joshua came through Pulev and Tyson Fury came through Wilder in their rematch, the boxing world awaited the biggest fight in a generation. Anthony Joshua vs. Tyson Fury for all the belts, to crown one heavyweight king that preceded the rest below. The contract had apparently been signed, the split agreed, and even the location in Saudi Arabia confirmed. But in the end, it wasn't to be. Former WBC champion Deontay Wilder won his arbitration case against Fury, and it is now official that the two will fight for a third time later this year. In many ways, the decision left Joshua in the mud as such. He had trained for the biggest fight of his life against Fury, only to have the opportunity snatched away in what seemed like an instant. Now he has had to prepare for what some say could be a very difficult and dangerous task in Oleksander Usyk, arguably the most accomplished, impressive cruiserweight fighter in recent times. The almost sudden change in opponent will most certainly impact Joshua's camp more than Oleksander's, especially given the magnitude of the Fury fight, and now with the Fury bout still dangling by a thread if they both come through their next, and maybe toughest opponents to date. Could it be possible that Joshua's mind may not be fully focused on the Ukrainian? A win for Usyk would not only shock the sporting world, it would catapult him to heights unimaginable, and for Joshua, a defeat would almost be too hard to imagine for AJ. The Fury fight would seem further away than ever, and he would have one hell of a task on his hands if he so wished to get all of his heavyweight belts back. To say there's a lot on the line would be an understatement, and as boxing fans, these are the kind of fights we live for.